The golden age of the Republic was an era of unprecedented peace and stability for the galaxy. 1,000 years of prosperity and growth. But just because there were no full-scale wars in this period doesn't mean that conflict stopped altogether. There were several smaller local wars the Republic found itself in over the course of this period. One of the most important of these was the Stark Hyperspace War of 44 BBY. This was a brief but brutal conflict that nearly brought the Republic to its knees, and in this video, we'll be telling its full story.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
It all started on Thyfera, the inner rim planet where all the galaxy's Bacta was produced, where, without warning, an Alazi processing plant operated by the Zukfra Corporation exploded. The plant was unsalvageable, and its destruction dramatically slowed down the Bacta production process, leading to a shortage. The price of Bacta skyrocketed, with the Trade Federation and other major distributors seizing on the shortage to price gouge the galaxy, especially the Outer Rim. This immediately caused unrest across the Republic, as Bacta was a vital commodity, and the Trade Federation's jacked up prices were more than many could afford. The Trade Federation and its peers weren't the only ones to take advantage of the Bacta shortage, however. A band of enterprising pirates known as the Stark Commercial Combine, led by the smuggler Yarko Stark, began attacking Trade Federation Bacta transports and reselling the stolen Bacta to Outer Rim worlds at much lower prices. This made Stark and his followers heroes in the Outer Rim, but it also caused a Bacta shortage in the core worlds, and it was met with alarm by the Galactic Senate. Outraged over the attacks, Senator Ranulph Tarkin of the Siswana sector, the leader of the Senate's militarist faction, insisted that military force was required to deal with Stark and his raiders. While the Trade Federation's Senate representative, Minister Newt Gunray, took the opportunity to lobby for the Trade Federation to be allowed to increase the size of its droid armies. However, cooler heads prevailed, and Senator Finis Valorum was able to convince the Senate to instead arrange a diplomatic summit with Yarko Stark in the hopes of resolving the crisis. Stark agreed to meet with Senate representatives on the remote planet Troikin, where Valorum hoped this whole issue could be laid to rest. But this crisis wasn't going to end so easily. There was more to the situation than it seemed. Viceroy Hask of the Trade Federation, Director Bell of the Zukfra Corporation, and Yarko Stark were secretly all in league with one another, and they had deliberately been working together to cause a crisis. The conspirators wanted to create an economic crisis to weaken the Republic, and they hoped to capitalize on the issue to deploy a computer virus the Stark Combine had developed to hijack the Navi computers of Republic ships, impeding hyperspace travel. The aim of this was to cripple the Republic merchant fleet and the Outland Region Security Force, which they hoped would cause the destabilization of the Republic, which the conspirators hoped would allow the galaxy's corporate factions to take over the Republic entirely. Yarko Stark had agreed to the summit at Troikin in the hopes of using it as an opportunity to release the Navi computer virus, beginning the second stage of the plan. Stark and his co-conspirators weren't even the only ones going into the summit with ulterior motives either. The aforementioned Senator Tarkin, who was not invited to Troikin but managed to threaten Newt Gunray into telling him where it was being held, planned to show up with overwhelming military forces and take advantage of the summit to crush the Stark Combine once and for all. Senator Tarkin was not just an ordinary militarist after all. In his previous career as Governor General of the Siswana sector, he had founded the Outland Region Security Force, a Tarkin family-led coalition of several planetary security forces that had used loopholes in the Ruusan reformations to amass a vast battle-ready war fleet. Tarkin wanted the ORSF to be the first step in reforming the Republic military, and he saw the crisis Stark had caused as his chance to win support for his position and discredit his critics. To that end, Tarkin assembled the entire ORSF fleet, which he would personally lead from his flagship, Invincible, and set a course for Troikin. Once Stark learned that the ORSF was on its way, the Troikin summit was doomed. On the day of the summit, Senators Valorum and Gunray, protected by a team of Jedi, met with Ayako Stark and the Combine's other directors only for Stark's men to draw their weapons on the dignitaries and accused Valorum of setting them up. The Jedi and Gunray's droid guards rushed to protect the dignitaries, and battle erupted. Stark was able to escape in the chaos, while the Jedi suffered casualties, losing the famed Wookiee Jedi Master Tyvoka to friendly fire from Gunray's droids. The Jedi and their charges were forced to flee to Mount Avos, where they soon came under siege from Combine forces. The Stark Hyperspace War had begun. In orbit over Troikan, what remained of Tarkin's fleet was destroyed, but only after Tarkin ordered his men to abandon ship and deploy to Mount Avos using their vessel's escape pods. Large portions of the ORSF ground army made it planetside, accompanied by Tarkin and surviving naval personnel. Once on the ground, they linked up with the Jedi and entrenched themselves in a network of abandoned mines beneath Mount Avos, which Stark's forces began shelling with ground-based artillery. Gunray and Tarkin urged the Jedi to surrender to Stark, but Plo Koon, who had taken command of the Jedi task force after the death of Tyvoka, refused. Instead, he began using his telepathic abilities to probe Iako Stark's mind, effectively eavesdropping as Stark detailed his plan to storm Mount Avos to the Combine directors. This allowed Republic forces to thwart several of Stark's offensives, allowing them to survive the siege despite critical shortages of Bacta and other supplies. Thanks to his telepathic eavesdropping, Plo Koon was able to plan a diversionary sortie that broke the Combine's siege just long enough for a small Jedi team to steal a Combine ship and ferry Valorum and Gunray back to Coruscant. There, Valorum was able to talk the Senate down from giving in to Stark's demands, but he was unable to convince them to send judicial reinforcements to Troikan. But the Jedi Council was able to work out a suitable backup plan. The Jedi had discovered that the Trade Federation had conspired with Zukfra and Stark to engineer this crisis, and they used this knowledge to blackmail Gunray into loaning them a Trade Federation fleet to take to Troikan, since the Trade Federation warships had been unaffected by the Na'vi computer virus. Orpo Rancisis, a master of Jedi battle meditation, took command of this fleet and immediately set out for Troikan, intent on ending the war. Through Plo Koon's telepathic link with his niece, Shah Koon, the Council was able to relay their plan to the ground team at Mount Avos. Knowing that victory was near at hand, Plo Koon then reached out to Stark, again telepathically, and straight up told him what the Council was planning, quickly convincing Stark that his situation was hopeless. Master Plo offered Stark amnesty if he defected, and gave the Jedi the password required to release all affected ships from the Combine's computer virus, and Stark, ever the opportunist, agreed. Meanwhile, the Trade Federation fleet arrived above Troikan and trounced Stark's naval forces, and Plo Koon's ground forces prepared to end the siege of Mount Avos. His plan was to allow Combine troops to breach the mountain's defenses while Republic forces evacuated through the mines, following which they would run around to the other side and seal both entrances, trapping the Stark troops harmlessly. Ranulph Tarkin had other plans, however. While Republic forces evacuated, Tarkin stole a detonator charge and stayed behind. He used the charge to unseal a cave full of flesh-eating insects, which shredded the Combine troops. Tarkin killed himself in the blast, but in the process, he had achieved his goal of wiping out the Stark commercial Combine, which the militarists seized upon to declare him a hero. The Stark Hyperspace War was brief, but it had a dramatic impact on the Republic. Following the war, the militarists enjoyed increased support galaxy-wide, and despite the illegality of their involvement in the conflict, survivors of the Outland Region's security force were honored as Republic veterans. Tarkin's death and the destruction of his pet project proved to only be a setback for the militarists, who rebounded quickly. They achieved sufficient power that, when Finis Valorum became Supreme Chancellor in 40 BBY, the militarists were able to strong-arm him into giving Ranulph Tarkin, his longtime rival, a posthumous commendation, officially declaring him the hero of Troikan. The Trade Federation also benefited considerably from the conflict. The Senate allowed it to expand its private droid armies, and Minister Newt Gunray was able to become the leader of the Trade Federation's Namodian faction for his perceived cleverness in loaning a TDF fleet to the Jedi for use in winning the war. After the end of the war, Gunray also received a message from Yarko Stark, who urged Gunray to contact a man he called his shadow benefactor, the one who had given him the idea for the whole conspiracy in the first place, a man he knew as Lord Sidious. So, that's our look at the Stark Hyperspace War, one of the most interesting small-scale conflicts of the prequel era. But what do you think? Are there other flashpoints like this that you think we should make videos about? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments below.